Every remote job comes with a list of rules. Most of them are about safety. Wear your boots, check in by radio, don't feed the wildlife. But every so often, way out past where the roads end, somebody hands you a rule that makes no sense at all. And the people who follow it anyway are the ones who come back. These are two of those stories. Real quick before we start, if this is your kind of thing, tap that like button and subscribe so the next one finds you. New Stories 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Okay, here's the first one. My name's Travis. A few years back, I was a seasonal worker, logging in the summer, odd construction in the fall, scraping to make it through to spring. Money was always tight in those months. So when a contract came up that paid cash to spend 6 weeks dismantling old fire lookout towers, I took it without thinking twice. The towers were way out in the Frank Church Wilderness, in central Idaho, the river of no return country. One of the biggest stretches of wild, roadless land left in the lower 48. A place where you can walk for days and never cross a paved road. The Forest Service was tearing down a string of old lookouts that hadn't been staffed in decades, and my job was to drive or hike out to each one, take it apart, and pack out what I could. Alone, one tower at a time. The foreman who hired me was a quiet old guy, leathery, careful with his words. And when he handed me the keys and the topo maps, he gave me 3 rules. He didn't say them like safety tips. He said them flat and slow, looking dead at me, making sure I heard each one. 1. Be packed up and below the tree line before dark, every single day, no exceptions. 2. Never, ever sleep in a tower overnight. And 3. Every lookout's got an old logbook in it, decades of rangers writing down the weather, the wildlife, who passed through. He said, if you ever find a book with fresh writing in it, don't read the last few pages, just bag it and move on. I figured he was a superstitious old-timer who'd spent too long in the backcountry. I said, sure thing. And for the first couple of weeks, honestly, it was just hard, lonely work. Cold mornings, long drives on washed-out roads, hauling rusted steel down off mountainsides. Nothing strange. Just me and the wind, and a whole lot of empty country. The first tower had a logbook, just like he said. Pages and pages of old entries going back to the 1960s. Faded pencil, water-stained. But the last entry, the most recent one, stopped me cold. Because the ink looked fresh, new, and it described a man arriving at the tower in a gray pickup, wearing a green canvas jacket, carrying a red tool bag. I was standing there in a green canvas jacket. My gray truck was parked down the slope. My red tool bag was in my hand. I told myself somebody else had been out here recently, another contractor, a hunter having a laugh. I bagged the book, and I got myself off that mountain before dark, exactly like the old man told me to. 3 days later, a different tower, 11 miles away as the crow flies, over a high ridge, no road, and no trail connecting the two. And there was a logbook there as well. And the newest entry, in that same fresh ink, described what I had done the day before, where I'd parked, that I'd eaten my lunch sitting on the east catwalk, that I'd cut my hand on a rusted bolt, and I had. I had a fresh bandage wrapped around my thumb that not one living soul had watched me put on. Something was writing about me, and whatever it was getting to these towers before I did. I should have walked away right then. But that money was already spent in my head. So I kept going. And against everything in my gut, I broke Rule 3. I started reading the last pages. Every tower. Because I had to know, and the entries were catching up to me. The first book described me arriving. The next described the day before. Then one described that very morning, what I'd had for breakfast, sitting in my truck. The writing was closing the distance between whatever was doing it and where I actually stood, like it was getting nearer with every tower. Almost caught up. The last tower on my list was the worst one to reach. The one abandoned the longest. A 2-hour hike up a dead trail that the forest had nearly swallowed. And I got there later in the day than I ever should have. The light was already going gold and long. I knew the rule, below the tree line before dark. But I told myself I had time for a quick look first. There was a logbook lying open on the floor inside, and the newest entry was still wet. It said, "He is here. He is reading this. His hands are shaking." And my hands were shaking. I dropped that book, and I went down the mountain faster than I have ever moved in my life. Branches tearing my face, the light bleeding out behind the ridges, and I did not look back, not once, because I could hear something keeping pace with me, not behind me on the trail, up in the branches, moving alongside me, fast and smooth, the whole way down. I hit the tree line right as the last of the daylight died. And whatever was up there with me, it stopped, right at that line, like it could not cross down out of the high country. I got in my truck and I drove straight through the night. I never finished the contract. I mailed the keys back with no note. A few months later, I worked up the nerve to call the foreman, and I finally asked him straight out, "What was that?" And he went quiet for a long, long time. And then he just said, "The fellow who had the job before you. He didn't follow rule number 1. They found his truck at the trailhead come spring. Never found him." And he hung up. I think about that every single year. The week the days start getting short. Our second story tonight comes from a different kind of remote job, a long way north. From a woman who didn't go out into the wild to escape money trouble. She went out there to escape everything else. And she found out that the rules they leave behind for you in those places, they get left for a reason. My name's Dana. The year this happened had taken just about everything out of me. A divorce I didn't see coming. A death in the family. A job I burned all the way out of. I didn't want a vacation. I wanted to be somewhere with no people, no phones, nothing to manage but myself. So I took a winter caretaker position at a backcountry ranger station, deep in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, up in northwest Montana. It's hard to put into words how isolated that is. The nearest plowed road was over 20 miles out. Once the heavy snow came in, I was there until the spring thaw. Alone, just me, and a 2-way radio, and a little log cabin, running off a diesel generator. And honestly, at first, it was exactly what I needed. The quiet was like a weight coming off my chest. I slept better out there than I had in a year. The caretaker before me had left a note on the kitchen table. Most of it was the normal stuff, how to bleed the water line when it froze, where the spare fuel cans were stacked. But the last paragraph was underlined. Twice. It said, "The generator cuts off automatic at 10 o'clock every night. Leave it off. I know the dark is hard out here. I know what you'll start to hear once it's quiet. But whatever you do not turn the lights back on after dark. The dark is the only thing keeping you hidden." I read that, and I figured the poor man had a bad case of cabin fever. Spent one winter too many alone and let his mind run away with him. I actually felt a little sorry for him. The first few nights, when the generator shut off at 10, the dark was complete, total, and the silence with it. And that was fine, peaceful even. It was the 4th night that I heard the footsteps. Out in the snow. Slow, heavy crunching, circling the cabin. Once all the way around. Then again. I sat dead still in the dark and told myself, elk. A moose. Something big and harmless wandering through the way they do. But elk don't circle a cabin for an hour straight. and elk don't come up onto a porch, which is what it did the fifth night. I heard the boards take the weight, one slow step at a time. I heard the door handle turn gently, testing the lock, and then breathing. Right on the other side of that door, inches away, slow and deep, for a long, long time. It never got in, and in the morning, there were tracks all the way around the cabin, but pressed so deep into the snow and spaced so far apart that after one look, I made myself stop studying them. And every night after that, it was more. I could hear it. Not one set of footsteps anymore. Several. Circling in the dark all night, every night, different weights, different rhythms. And every night, I sat in that pitch black cabin and did exactly what that note said. I left the lights off. Because somehow, in the dark, they never seemed to know precisely where I was. They circled, they searched, but they never came straight to me. On the 9th night, I broke. I just could not take the dark for one more minute with those things moving around out there in it. I wanted light. I wanted to feel like a normal person in a normal house for 60 seconds. So I got up, and I crossed to the generator switch by the door, and I flipped it on. Every light in that cabin blazed to life at once, and every window lit up like a stage. And I saw them, standing out in the snow, ringed all the way around the cabin, just past the porch line. Dozens of them, tall, pale, perfectly still. And the instant the lights came on, every single one of those faces turned, toward the windows, toward the light, toward me. They hadn't known. Not exactly. Not where I was in all that dark. Not until I lit myself up like a beacon in the middle of the night and showed them precisely where to look. I have never moved so fast. I killed that switch and I threw myself into the back corner of the cabin, away from every window, and I sat there in the black with both hands clamped over my mouth, not making a sound, until the sky finally started to turn gray. When the light came up for real, they were gone. But the snow around that cabin was trampled flat into a solid ring, right up against the base of every single window. I radioed out at first light and told them I had a family emergency. I put on my snowshoes and I hiked the 20 miles to the road, and I never went back. And somewhere on that long walk out, I finally understood the part of the note I'd laughed at. The dark is the only thing keeping you hidden. Because out there, the light doesn't keep the dark away. It just tells the dark exactly where you are. That's both for tonight. 2 people, 2 jobs, 2 sets of rules that sounded like nonsense right up until the moment they were the only thing standing between those folks and whatever was waiting out past the light. If they stuck with you, hit that subscribe button so the next one finds you. And if you ever take a job out past the end of the road, and somebody hands you a list of rules that don't make any sense, follow them anyway.